Hello there and welcome to 40K by Night. This is the podcast that aims to get us better as players on the tabletop of Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights with the help of an expert panel of top players, which we have all set up and ready to go for you today. Before we get to that in this very special episode on list building, a couple of things. First of all, my name's Steve Joel. It's great to have you with us. I am not an expert player, but I have a long history as a radio announcer and broadcaster, and so that's my role here, is to be the interviewer and question asker. Welcome to the Discord. For the new people on Discord, we have a free Discord for you, and we'd love to see you there. And all of our guests are members of the Discord as well, and they're always great at replying to your questions through the Discord and helping you out through there if you are available and on it. And we have a Patreon, $3 a month to support the podcast. That does get you some benefits. The main benefit is just helping us out, helping us stay on air. But another benefit is you get discounts on merch, like, for example, the Baron of Dice dice, which have been restocked by our friends at Baron of Dice. I'm going to get very soon to explain the funny story of how my dice finally arrived in New Zealand. They went the longest possible way around the world from the United States. But first, let's bring our guests in to say hello. And they are from the UK, Rees Darvill. Hi, Rees. How are you, man?
I'm good, Steve. I'm good. I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Oh, I feel like I really hyped that up and you came in very low key, but that's fine.
Go on to play it.
Sure. And from Florida, from the United States, Brian Jones. Welcome back. Good to have you, man. How are you?
Don't lead with Florida. Just say from the United States. That just gives you a connotation that I wasn't ready for.
Okay, I apologize. I want to talk about the dice very quickly. First of all, if you go to the website, the dice link is available on the website, which you can see there is 40kbynight.com. My dice finally, thank you, Brian, arrived in New Zealand. They went, first of all, from Baron of Dice to the border, wherever that may be, and then were held at the border because of the whole tariff situation in the States. The courier company was unwilling to send them out of America. And then so they went back to Baron of Dice. And then from Baron of Dice, they went to Brian's house in the, can I say the state?
You can say in Florida now. Just don't say front. I don't want that to be. John already has claim to Florida man as an identity. So I just don't want to lead with that.
You don't want to lead with Florida, but it's okay to be in Florida. Got it. So because of a shipping mistake and the fact that I ordered dice at the same time as sending some to Brian, all of my dice got sent to Florida. So then they had to go back from Florida to wherever in the States Baron of Dice is, I think Washington. And then finally, the 9,000-mile trip from there to New Zealand. So I got my dice finally, and here they are. And I'm going to tell you this. Since I started using my Baron of Dice 40K by Night dice, I have only won games. I have not lost since I started using the dice. And I have also gotten slightly taller. My hair is thicker and darker. And I've become more attractive, just in general. So, if you're I wanted to say, if you're a Patreon member, you get discounts on the dice. All right. So all of that's out of the way. Gentlemen, we're talking list building. And I'm actually surprised. We got so much engagement on the Discord and the Patreon with this. And I thought this would be more kind of like one of those episodes that, we fill things in with. It's important to get to. But people are really keen to hear your thoughts on list building philosophies and ideas and units and whatnot. So, Brian, can we start with you and just, do you have a list building philosophy or a starting point, or how do you do list building in general?
I do. We were joking before because Steve was like, think about how many points you dedicate to each thing. And I was like, well, that's cute that you think I put that much thought into it. But no, I approach it, to your point, from more of a philosophical standpoint, in that, when I'm diving into a codex, be it Knights or anything else, I want to start list building, the first thing I do is I pick which codex I feel like I can have the most fun with, like what feels like it's got tools that I want to play with, and I'll go from there. So for me, that's how I wound up getting to Valor Strike, through the route of every other detachment first,
Right.
because we have a gluttony of choices now. And then I think about, in Knights, the first thing I'm thinking about is, what is my ratio of bigs to smalls? It's a pretty easy question for us. I like to go traditionally like have as many big knights as I can, but I know I have to have other models on the table. And then I want to think about for knights. My approach is always thinking about a take all comers list because you need to be ready to play into anything. And my philosophy in list building always is, in take all comers versus a skew list. I would always rather have a chance in any game I walk up to. I never want to walk up to a table and feel like I lost this in list building because I decided to, build for the skew list and now I can't compete. I want to have a chance in every one. So that's the core of how I build all my lists. So in Imperial Knight, that's thinking about a balance of combat, a balance of shooting, ideally mobility, and OC, which I'll be honest, pre-Codex was not often a concern for me. But now with Armigers at OC6 and degrading, it is something I have to consider in my list building of do I have enough OC to actually play the primary game? So that's a new wrinkle I've been adjusting to. But that's where I start. And then as I add a big knight, I think about, all right, what of those boxes does it check? So the Atropos, for example, is great. It checks shooting, it checks combat, it checks high mobility. It's a great all-arounder, and it brings 10 OC to the table. Love that. Something like the Gallant is a bit more of a niche. It's not bringing much range firepower, but it's bringing a lot of combat. And just where all of that fits into the roles I need them all to play. And then after that, once I've got the 2,000 points kind of constructed, then I start thinking through in my head, how would this play on the table? How would I use these pieces? And if I hit all there, then I'm going back and readjusting what's in the list.
It's a great starting point, and I do have a couple of questions, but let's get Rees, first of all, to chime in with your overall philosophy and the way you look at it and any differences to the way Brian does it.
I'd say it's pretty similar in general, right? You go with a game plan, you work out what you want to play, as Brian said. Basically by going through all of them, ticking off which ones you don't want to play and work out where you end up.
Yeah.
I'd say the big part for me is every time I build a list, it has a reason. It's like the recent list I played with the Defender and the Armigers. I wanted to slog, I wanted to play a slow game. I wanted to play that sort of OC control. I've played lists where it's been free big because I wanted to play, more aggressive firepower. I wanted to push. It always depends first what sort of like mood or style I'm in for, because then I can work out exactly what I want from the list. And then it's a case of I can build from there, and it's finding what knights fit those roles. It's like a double-edged sword, right? We don't have huge amounts of choice with our data sheets. Like the variety isn't huge, so it means I don't get lost in the source. But I also, there's a better choice for each situation. Like there just is a better option generally. One knight will fit what you want from it. We can be pretty cookie cutter in that sense, where if you want a big knight that's going to take out big threats, Atropos. If you want a big knight that's going to deal with hordes, Crusader. Like you have your sort of set standard. I do like there, like, you diverge from it every now and then. It's kind of fun to lob 2 Corvus Black Stars in, but yeah, it's just work out what I want to play and how it goes, and just go from there pretty much.
And for both of you, so someone at my level, I very often I play favorites. Like I have favorite units that may not necessarily competitively always make sense, or there are situations, probably more accurately, where there are knights that I have tried, and Brian, God love it, the Castellan, I've tried it 3 times recently, and every time it's been a dog. And that may just be player skill or not being able to use it properly or whatever, but the shorter movement, the fact that it's got no combat, and, even in Valor Strike, which is where I was trying to use it, I just struggle with it. So as much as top players can use it and are great with it and love it, I have had to say the Castellan's not me. It doesn't fit with also the play style. And I guess I want to ask for both of you, how much does that come into it? I want knights that have both, even in Valor Strike, the ability to shoot and also punch their way out of trouble or be a combat threat. So if someone exposes a unit, I know that I can move forward and punch them, in the face. So that's just a style thing, maybe more than anything else. Brian, how much does your own play style go into the unit choices you make?
Substantially. I think everything you just said applies at the higher level as well. there are units, there are armies that just don't click for me the way they do for other people.
Right.
Like, in much the same way, I think knights click for me in a way they probably don't for some people. But there are units that I just struggle to use. I can't find, like, I loved the Castigator. Like, as we got into 10th edition, I dove right in, bought one. I was so excited. It really struggled for me using it properly. Not because the data sheet was bad. The gun is very good. I struggle because it only has a single gun, and then it has single combat. And I just found for me, I didn't click well with a unit that was just, all right, it's got a single thing I can point somewhere in the shooting phase, and a single thing I can point. I'm so used to having both arms do things. I can fight as well. The Cascadator just doesn't click for me as well as it does for others. So I think no one should feel ashamed or feel like that means that they're bad as a player. I think we all just have different skill sets and different play styles that we'd actually gravitate towards. And I mean, there are some players out there who can just jump into anything. So far, I'm not that person. I know how I like to play, and that definitely does play a component of my list building. But to Rees's point, where we're not Space Marines, where we're dealing with 120 data sheets that you can choose from, it's harder to get lost in the sauce. And you do still sometimes find roles pushing or needing something in a list, pushing you to use something you wouldn't normally use. So I do like that, since that I use most of the codex. Between the different detachments, there's nothing that I'm just like, no, other than the Acheron. Nope, I'm sorry, it just doesn't have a place. But yeah, I think we all have units you just can't use that well, and that's fine.
That one is bullied, though. That one is the poor kid in the playground that is just never picked for the sports team. That's the one that nobody wants.
No, he legitimately, the Acheron, like, went to the toy store and his mom's like, we have a Valiant at home, and it's you.
And same question for you, Rees. You know, your play style, the way you like to play, you just mentioned that's kind of why you chose Spearhead, and that's why you had the one big and the lots of littles. Are there units that you've tried and just stay away from, even if other people can make them work, or units that you put in because you just love them, or anything like that?
Oh, 100%. Like, I just listed the Crusader as one of the best for, like, clearing chaff, big shooting platform. I hate it. I don't like double gun knights. I struggle when I'm not playing mixed arms. I can play a Lancer because that's pushing central, that's causing space, He's got multi-role in the sense that I enjoy being up, making space. Stuff like, like the Castell and the Crusader and all that. They make space in a different way. They make space with range, pressure, firing lines, and when we used to run like the deep strike enhancement on that and stuff, it made different forms of space. I hate that. Yeah. Good play, like other good players, other general players, anyone used to run those things and do great with it. But it just wasn't for me. Right. And I found if I tried to play that style, I played worse because it's not playing how I want to play.
I was remiss at the start of the episode as well, by the way. I was holding up dice and showing things off and introducing the guests, and particularly that's for our YouTube audience. We are now on YouTube. If you haven't clocked that yet, please go check us out on YouTube. There is a channel, 40K by Night. I also, when I was introducing our specialists, I didn't say who you guys are. We've got names. I do want to let people know, if you're new to this, if you're new to the podcast, if you haven't listened to this before, Brian Jones, member of Team USA and the Art of War team, and consistently recognized as one of the best Imperial Knights players in the world. Rees Darvill in the UK finished the last ITC season as the #1 Knights player in the world. So we've got two of the best helping us through the episode today.
I'm chasing Rees to see if I can reclaim it this year. We've alternated years now, so I need a strong showing at Worlds.
I'm rooting for
to net myself like 200 ITC points, but
I heard Brian asking Rees before if you're going to Worlds, but I didn't hear the answer because I was trying to get other stuff going on. Is that happening, Rees?
I won't be at Worlds this year.
Okay. Let's get into the questions from our Patreon and our Discord. And I was saying to the guys before we started, we've just got so many. So rather than me going through the questions in my brain, let's ask the questions that you guys want to hear the answers to. And we're going to start with AJ. When list building, do you think Knights perform better as a faction that asks questions or a faction that has answers to the meta? Are we proactive, reactive? Maybe is the way of phrasing that, or I don't know. Brian, what do you think? Are we a pushing?
That's a
army?
very interesting question. My answer may be biased because for me, I'm like, well, the answer for me for faction is knights, so I'm gonna force the decisions on other people because
Right.
but I guess I'll get up on a soapbox really quick. I don't think we're meta defining in the way maybe people have viewed it in the past because whole lists exist in this edition everywhere. Any faction can do it. And so the traditional kind of rhetoric that knights are an inherent skew list, they just force the game into a weird direction, is not, there's just not truth to it in this edition because you can run into an Iron Storm list that has higher toughness and more wounds somehow than we do with knights. Similar with Guard or with Death Guard and things like that. So I think I actually, going back to what Rees said, where you've got your knight for kind of each role. There's rarely been a time in the meta where I have looked at our data sheets and said, there's just not a knight for me that provides an answer. I think maybe like this time last year, it was depressing that the answer to every question was an Atropos because we didn't really have anything else to hang around with. We were reliant on having that invul, and so it was just like, whatever list they're going to throw at me, what's the answer? Atropos. Now with the Codex, I think we have both. We have the ability to react to the meta that we probably didn't have before. And we also have the ability to just come in and say, like, you have to be prepared for my list because it has tools now. And that's the cool part I think we didn't have before.
We are going to take a short break in answering questions to introduce another top player, one of the great Chaos Knights players. Has joined us a little late to the party, but great to have you. Ratnu, welcome along. Spiking
hello.
among Imperial Knights players. We have this makes my OCD brain so much happier having all four corners of the screen filled now. Ratnu, thanks for joining us, mate. We are talking list building, as you know, and we've already asked the other guys, but if we can just quickly get from you your overall list building philosophy. Is there a unit you start with? Is there a place you start? Is there a number of big knights you have to have? Is there a certain number of points you dedicate to point scoring? What is your high looking down philosophy for list building?
My goodness. So that's a hard one to start with. I think when it comes to sort of list building philosophy, I'm sure you guys have probably already spoken about it in way more detail. But really it's about having units that fill roles, and it's about having units that, you know, perform a function and having redundancy built in within that. Typically in Warhammer, you want stuff that sits on your home objective. You want stuff that threatens your opponent's expansion. You want stuff that does damage. You want stuff that does actions. And one of the really unique things about Knights, both kind of Imperial and Chaos Knights, is that we have a phenomenal amount of role compression where a big knight can be on a point, maybe be on 2 points. It can do an action and it can shoot. So immediately, by having one unit in that kind of knight's context, you're fulfilling that same role that kind of 5 or 6 units would fill in any other army. So immediately we're at that kind of advantage. But the disadvantage being that if your opponent gets one too many Dark Lances through, or one too many Exalted 8-bound choppies, then we are effectively 5 or 6 units down.
Yeah. Okay. So it's about identifying the roles that you need to fill and then picking units that can do that. Do you have for knights like a favored number of big knights? Are you looking at that as a question that you need to answer? I know you've decided on Noble Lance now, but when the book first came out, did you have to kind of go through things and figure out which detachment you like best, and then which number of big knights and so on? Because you're further down the track than we are, and so you've probably answered all these questions properly, or Chaos Knights players in general have.
Yeah, so I think Chaos Knights at the moment feels reasonably like solved, in the sense that if you see a Chaos Knights player against you, you're probably going to expect some number of double Gatling gun despoilers, some number of carnivores, some number of Nurglings, and some number of Beasts of Nurgle, and then the rest is just really icing on the cake. In terms of my sort of personal process, I think that triple despoiler is probably too much. You know, the fact that you're so susceptible and vulnerable to T12, -1 damage, 2+ save, AOC, means that there's a little bit more kind of tinkering around the edges and a bit more fun. So there's yeah, I think 3 big knights is probably a nice number. 2, and you start to feel a little bit light on damage, and 4+, you start to feel a little bit light on resources. I think 3 is a bit of a kind of happy medium, at least for Chaos Knights.
Right.
And yeah, filling out the rest with at least carnivores with the most efficient war dog, maybe some stalkers for the scouting pressure, and the rest for demons, at least in singles lists.
Yeah, great. I love that it's, you know, all the roles, because, and again, Brian and Rees, you can speak to this better than I can, but that is definitely something when I'm building a list, something that I'm looking at. Like each unit you put in, you're like, okay, what is the job of this guy? What am I putting this thing in for? The Helverins are there obviously to be able to have, you want some long range shooting to be able to pick things off from a distance. You don't want your whole army having to go up the board. I've got a navigator because I need somebody to hold the home point, or what, you know, just how much of that thought process for you guys is I need things to fill certain roles, certain jobs. Start with Rees.
Yeah, no, it's generally it all falls into that purpose, right? Of what's this model going to do? Whether it's hold home, whether it's good against another meta things, like if there's heavy melee pressure, that is a lot of the time when I'll bring the Lancer or the Gallon, you know, to look that way. They're all in there for a reason to fill that specific role. Sometimes the role is I just really like the look of it, but you know, 90% of the time it's got a job on the table.
I just finished painting it, so it's going on the table.
Yeah.
It's its job to die first. Okay, great. So, Ratnu, we are kind of going through the questions that our Patreons and our Discord users, our members, have for you guys. So we're going to get you to attack this one from Paul Evans. If you were to build a 5 big knights list for Questora's companions, how would you go about making sure it's balanced? For example, I'm looking at running Castellan and Crusader for backline, Warden and Canis midfield bullying, and a Lancer to go frontline. This is a very specific question. It's less broad, big, you know, big picture thinking, and very specific question. But maybe Rees and Brian, can you help us out with this one? If you're building a 5 big knight list, how do you balance that?
Generally on the shelf.
That's not helping, Paul.
I mean, realistically, you want different roles again, right? You don't want 5 knights that can't push in the midboard.
Yeah.
You don't want 5 knights that can't shoot the screen in front of one of them, so you're going to get blocked for 5 turns in a row. It's figuring out how you're going to have something be able to be in the backfield to deny sort of, you know, enemy scoring easily for stuff like behind, for deploy, for stuff like that. It's what you're going to do to be able to push up and cause pressure and aggro and actually create space. And it's then thinking about how you're going to play the long game, whether this one is going to go all guns out and table the opponent turn 3 so you can score, or whether you're going to play slow and chip away bit by bit and wait for your turn. And that way you can play till turn 5. And then you can abuse the OC10, just walk over a ruin, stand on the objective.
Yeah.
Brian, I know you have 3 big knights is generally your number, but if you were going to play 5,
I would love to. I laugh at that question because I would say that question may be inherently flawed because I don't think you can call 5 big knights balanced as a list.
Yeah, that's okay.
You can try to balance the roles they've all got to fill, to Rees's point. And you know, it's fun. I think for me, I think any kind of 5 big mixed arms list is going to be fun to play. To the point that kind of Ratnu and Rees were making earlier, though, is that in that 5 big list, if you take 1 too many Dark Lances and one of your 5 dies, it's like so much more impactful to whatever game plan you may have been having. And for those early turns where it's like, okay, I need to put something out on my expansion to hold it, you know, because maybe I drew extend battle lines and something else. If you have to put that big out there and it dies for that, the threat of you scoring primary turn 2 and getting 4 secondary points on turn 1, that is not a great trade. And that's the challenge more so I think you face in a 5 big list. It's not bouncing against your opponent. It's actually bouncing against how the game is played.
So the other thing I would say, and this is from the point of view of the least good player here, is I think a really important part of this whole process is figuring out what you want to achieve at an event, if that's what you're building a list for, or a game, if that's what you're building a list for. If you want to take 5 big nights to an event, look, you're going to have a lot of fun in 3 out of the 5 games you play, probably. And you'll probably have fun in the other 2 as well, but you can't, don't take that list expecting that you're going to win the tournament, because Fire Dragons will ruin your day, and Dark Lancers will ruin your day, and World Eaters, and what I know, there probably lots of things will. But there are some games you auto win when you turn up to the table, and some games you auto lose when you turn up to the table with 5 big nights. But you've
if
just
your
got
goal is to have a lot of time after every round, that's a great list to bring.
That's right. Or if you just want to look, I want to play this and I want to have fun, and I don't care how I do overall at the event, then go nuts and have fun. And yes, try and balance it as best you can. But if your goal is to go into an event and be as competitive as possible, then maybe we listen to the advice of these fine gentlemen that we have on this podcast and think of another type of list to play. Dominic says, first off, thanks to everybody for the hard work. Dominic, thank you for being a Patreon. When list building, how much importance do you place on multi-phase nights and multi-invuln nights? And when list building, how do you mitigate against these issues of taking a single phase night, or say nights that just have an invuln and shooting? Yeah, that's the question. How much importance do you place on multi-phase nights is the first port of call here. Ratnu, do you have like a Chaos Knights point of view here? Because I feel like before you got here, we kind of touched on nights with lots of uses on different arms.
Yeah, so I think sort of classically and sort of historically, Chaos Knights has always been a very sort of role-specific function. So even in the index, we had brigands that shot really well and carnivores that punched really well. But sort of now experimenting, I really like the Atropos. So does Rees. And I think that having a multi-phase night really allows you to essentially play different facets of the game. Even if your knight is potentially not the most consistent and the most reliable, having that threat of having a knight, say like an Atros behind a ruin that you can then project and push out the following turn, sort of presents something unique that, let's say, another double Gatling gun despoiler doesn't necessarily solve. And also the fact that it's multi-phase means that you're never fully locked out, in the sense that at worst in Infernal Lance, people seem to hate the Atropos, but I am a big fan because literally, even if it's doing nothing else, it can move 15 through a wall with an invul, be 10 OC, and do an action. But at the same time, you can threaten moving that 10 OC around with a charge, threaten stuff like Epic Challenge, Precision, all of these other kind of various things. So even though classically Chaos Knights tend to be monophase, I think there's definitely a role for at least 1 or 2 multi-phase Knights.
If you have a monophase night, and by the way, you're talking to at least 3 other people who definitely appreciate the Atropos in an Imperial Knights list. But Rees, if you're taking a monophase night, do you feel like you need to put some effort in list building into protecting the monophase night? Like if you're taking a Crusader or a Castellan, do you need to kind of babysit it a little bit, like with a Navigator or some smaller units to screen, or think about what else is going in there to look after it? Or is that not a consideration?
It's not hugely consideration. Generally, when the multi-phase knight is put in the list, it's put in there for a reason, right? It's not put in there.
If I said multi, I meant mono. If you've got
sorry, I meant mono. I meant mono. Yeah, that's right, me. Okay, yeah, generally when that monophase knight's put in there, it's put in there for a reason. I'm not going to put a Lancer in there and be upset when it gets stuck in combat in the midboard, right? That's just an expectation. At the same time, if I'm taking a Crusader or, in like Ratnu's case, a Despoiler, I know it's going to be beeline to be tagged. This is just what's going to happen. It's a case of planning for when it happens, not babysitting to make sure it doesn't. Because it's going to happen, right? You just need to be able to mitigate how much of your next turns or your sort of turns in general it's going to impact, and making sure positioning and you have ability to output in other areas, be that in list building, making sure you've got other options of either damage or scoring that isn't all going to be tied up, or on the board, make sure next turn you have an answer to what's going on.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. And I probably have spent too much time thinking about it the other way, but it will happen. Just figure out what to do when it does happen.
If I can, Rees hit on a great thing, which is thinking about just as much when you're putting together a list and you're thinking about the roles that will all play. What you also want to be thinking about is what are the weaknesses of my list, because you may put together a whole lot of like multi-phase knights, but if none of them have a melee invuln, and you go, well, what about it when I run into World Eater? Oh no. And so when you start identifying those weaknesses, you don't want to be bringing multiple units that all have the exact same weakness.
Right.
And so as you analyze your own list, you're going, cool, these are my 5 major weaknesses. So my tools for addressing those come from the other knights I'm putting into the list. To your point of, do I have a different knight that can protect it or screen for it? There could be an enhancement that addresses it. There could all be stratagems or a detachment rule that address it. For me, that's one of the huge things I love about Valor Strike is that Thunderstomp as a stratagem checks one of the biggest weaknesses a monophase knight like a Crusader presents when I bring it in. Suddenly, it can fight its way out, and there's no trade-off for me of bringing its guns if I can use Thunderstomp to get it out of combat and be able to keep shooting. And that for me is a huge component in list building, is like what, Valor Strike for me is an all-arounder because it gives me tools to kind of address all situations. There are other lists this just makes you better at this thing. Like it is Questor's Companions is just big knight more, and that's cool. But you just got to know what you're signing up for, because the same 8 units could function really well in one detachment and be hot garbage in another. And it's all about how all of those pieces come together.
And speaking of weaknesses, and Ratnu, we'll start with you here, but since the decrease in durability of knights, Imperial Knights lost their Feel No Pain, but all of us have lost a pip of toughness and, the OC change and things like that. So how much effort do you think we put into building a list and trying to make up for that loss? Certainly for Imperial Knights, the loss of the Feel No Pain. Should we then now be focusing more on trying to get more durable units in? Or is it a matter of like, you know what, screw it, we're just focus on damage output now and throw caution to the wind and go in that direction? How much of the thinking around durability do we need to do?
I think durability kind of in and of itself is hard to look at. I sort of look at 40k as a sort of trifecta of output, durability, and speed. And realistically, an army should probably have 2 of those things. If it's got all 3, it's probably a little bit too good, which is kind of what we've seen when it comes to problems in the meta. I think when it comes to durability, it's often good to have kind of layers. So I don't know enough about the Imperial Knights, but in Chaos Knights, once again, Infernal Lance, really, really good for this. The army rule, you can get stealth outside of 18. You can combo that with a 4-up invul and the 6-up Feel No Pain. So straight away, that's 3 layers of durability. So that's 3 ways that you're impacting your opponent's dice rolls when it comes to any activation. In melee, you have the option for either the 5-up invul or the 6-up Feel No Pain. And that's in conjunction with the Armor of Contempt stratagem, and that's potentially in conjunction with Nurgling. So once again, that's -1 to hit, potentially worsening their AP, you having a Feel No Pain +- a melee invul. So I think it's hard to look at it in terms of focusing absolutely on durability, focusing absolutely on speed, or focusing absolutely on output. But it's about having these various different levers that you can crank as and when you need to.
Right. It's one of the things that I think about, because say, for example, that's a great reason for me to have the Lancer in there, because I've got a unit it's got a 4-up invul all the time. The Atropos has got the 5-up all the time. For the Lancer, I don't need to worry about spending a CP on rotating Iron Shields. I really am missing the 6-up Feel No Pain. But if I can try and mitigate that in some way, we've got the option in Valor Strike of stealth on a unit. So if you can give the Lancer stealth before you send it out, you've got the reactive move. There are ways of maybe mitigating the issue of the durability loss in Imperial Knights. But I'd love to know, Rees, is that something you think about when you're building the list, or do we just have to as you said, we're going to take a punch in the face, having to figure out how to deal with it when we do.
I think the big thing with Imperial Knights right now is we lost the Pippa toughness, we lost the feel no pain. It's not that we die really easy, it's that we die on average. We used to spike, right? And there used to be models that would live when they shouldn't. And I can attest, right? I've won games because feel no pains were made. That is just how it was. And we got so comfortable leaning on that, where suddenly models are living when they shouldn't, and we have a bigger board presence than we should. Whereas now adapting to a game where models die when they should more than often now, as they should. And I think that's a huge part of adapting to the new list building, in the sense of, yes, you're going to die. You need to also bring a way to try and have knights which die less fast, but they will die. But have knights which can capitalize on the space they make while they're doing that. And it's like Ratnu said, playing the even spread of the free.
Yeah, great. Brian, do you have a thought on this too?
Yeah, it's funny. I would say we died on average pre-points drop. So for the majority of this edition, we died on average because I find that the Feel No Pain fits very well with knight models, because we do run into this like variance issue where it's like you make, the Lancer, on the one hand, it has a 4-up all the time. On the other hand, it has a 4-up all the time. Like I have to roll a 4 half. And so you can have the time where you're like, cool, I rolled 10 of 10 4-ups on all of your single damage weapons. Now you shot 3 last cannons and I failed all 3. And the Feel No Pain to me helped mitigate that component for Knights players, in that it smoothed out the damage curve from weapons. Now not having that it's painful, because you can die so much easier than in the past, because it can't just be like you failed the first 4 saves from Melta that somebody puts on you and your Lancer's like down to 1 wound and you're like, well, this isn't good. And there's no other than a CP reroll, there's no shield for us right now. I do envy our Chaos Brethren a little bit and their ability to still get the Feel No Pain. We can in Questor's Companions, but to get that, or to have the on-demand melee in Vuln. But I think people have to recognize that we're much more vulnerable to spikes now, and you are much more kind of at variance's whim. That played to our advantage, because to your point, we scammed the hell out of some people with Feel No Pains when we could, when variance was on your side. But now if you do fail the wrong saves, it can be it feels bad. That's anytime people come to me for advice on Knights, the first thing I tell them is, you need to be really comfortable with being able to laugh when you just fail the 3 wrong saves. Like, you got to be able to laugh and have a good time, because if that's going to upset you, it's not the faction for you.
So does that change? I guess what I'm asking is, does that change your philosophy in list building, the fact that we die easier now as Imperial Knights? Or should it maybe change the way people are playing? We just need to be a little bit more cagey, a little bit more defensive. Is there any of that, or is it picking the right decision?
I wanted unit count to go up, because I did find I die easier, because to the point earlier, I believe it was Paul asking about the 5 big list, the point of, if one of them dies, it's 20% of your army. That's protecting yourself against that variance payoff, where it's like, oh no, I just failed the wrong saves and I'm on the back foot from the get-go. Can I dig myself out? I do think, though, I will say this is also a part where the meta answering to other things can be beneficial for us. People having to adapt to hordes being in, and no longer just pure, I'm going to tech for knights, will be able to work to our advantage too. Because like, when there's 3 less las cannons shooting you in a turn, it's really helpful.
Yeah. We've got a great question from Brian on our Patreon. When building the list, do certain allies, for example, Sisters of Battle and Immolator, Breaches, Subductors, have any sway on how many and which bigs and littles are taken? Brian Jones, lover of Immolators and Sisters of Battle. Is that a starting point for you on a list? Because they are fantastic to have in there for, I mean, you're building a Knights list, but do you go, well, I got to have my Sisters and I've got to have my Immolators. So then does that influence what you take from there on?
Yes, unless I'm taking a spearhead list, Rees. I'd rather take the archers, but They are an include in the list because they address a weakness that I struggle to find a solution for in my list building with just the Imperial Knights Codex, which is I need something with a good amount of OC that I don't mind putting out to action and potentially die in the first 2 turns, but something that requires a not insignificant commitment from my opponent. The Emulator addresses that in such a great way because it is a T10 tank that can pop smoke, which my Armature can't do, and has 6 of invuln all the time, which is great. And then if it dies, it has 5 girls inside who are OC2 each. And usually that's requiring a multi-phase commitment because if you position it correctly, the girls can get out in a way that's beneficial to you. And heck, they can sticky the objective if they get out and they have no other shooting left. And so for that early action primary piece, I haven't been able to find something in the Imperial Knights Codex that does it better. So that's why they're in my list.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is that the starting point of the list, and then does that influence from that starting point how many big knights, little knights, and whatever else you fit in? Or do you start with the big knights and little knights and then fit in as many sisters and immolators as you can once you've got the rest of the balance?
The latter. I think they come in at the end because there are sometimes I might run 1 immolator or none. If I choose to go wide, like a 2-7-ish list that's not in Spearhead, I would think about putting them, but in Spearhead, 2 bigs and most smalls, I'm not going to find a place for them. But they are the allies package is definitely the end of my list building. It's not the first thing. It's not like my best friend Canis Rex was for 2 years of this edition, where he just defaulted into every list. Like I needed to set that in the app. Just put Canis in auto.
And as much as we are envious of some of the things that Chaos Knights players have access to, Nurglings, beasts of Nurgle, boy, the moaning about how we get Canis Rex and they don't, Ratnu, my friends who are Chaos Knights players never let me hear the end of this whole Canis Rex thing. We probably want to pick up the pace a little bit with answering questions, or we'll be here all night long. Daniel on our Patreon, thank you for your question and your patronage. I feel like we have answered that, though, with the high-level list-building conversation. DJ Stewart, this one, again, with Ratnu, with apologies, this is a very specifically Imperial Knights question. As an AdMech player building into Knights, what would a Forge Pack list look like that efficiently makes use of a detachment that DJ says easily reaches top 5 status in our army? It is one of the top 5 detachments that we have available to us. Rees is saying no. It's not even in the top 5. So
you said we wanted to go faster with questions, and then you gave us a hard one like that.
Yeah. Maybe this is maybe. Do you know what?
Can you give me the rest of the episode and like circle back to Rees and I on this question before we end? I need the time to think.
Do you know what I'll do? We're going to go over to the Discord, and what we will do, DJ, is I give you the commitment that we will get Jind Singh on here and do a special Quest to Forge Pact episode, because we have covered off a number of the others. I feel like we're going to have to deep dive into Valor Strike.
If we can find, I put it in the Art of War Discord in the Knights channel there too. If we can find a Quest Wars Forge Pack list that we think actually could go like 4-1-5-0 at a GT, I will take it to the first GT I go to after Worlds. I will.
Okay.
I've said it on recording. You can physically see me. This isn't AI generated.
Next GT, I'll take Forge Pact. I'm game.
Okay. Wow. Boy, oh boy, this has escalated quickly. From our Patreon, we'll get through from our Discord, we'll get through as many of these as we can. Starting with Ratnu, 1 auto-include data sheet for each detachment. So we'll start with Chaos Knights. Auto-include data sheet, is there one? Is it the Atropos?
So for Hound Pack lands, probably 6 carnivores, which is 6 data sheets.
It's one data sheet, but yeah, got it.
For Traitoris, honestly, I genuinely rate the Abominant in Traitoris because it's all about the spooky Battleshock stuff. So ways to do Battleshock on demand is great. Infernal Lands probably has to be the Despoiler again. Iconoclast Fiefdom which is the cultist one. It's probably going to be the ACDC. There's so much interesting tech you can do with that unit in that detachment. And finally, Lords of Dread. I'd probably say the Atropos there because of the free CP reroll and the Vect, sort of turn it into like Canis from Wish.com.
Right, got it. Rees, auto include for each detachment.
Spearhead Defender, Questorius. I like Canis just for the free sticky. Valor Strike. I would put the Atropos, and then Gate Warden. I would probably say I'm not as sold on this one, but I've actually really enjoyed the Errant Inquest in Gate Warden.
Okay.
Sustained on that big gun and giving Assault heading down that line with plus 3-inch move on a Warglaive. That guy punches.
Yeah, okay. Brian, any disagreement there from you about the auto includes and the detachments?
I respect the choices. I do. I think, let's see. For me, Valor Strike, I'll say Daka Crusader, because I think it just has a place in that one with Assault. I know Rees hates that data sheet. For Gate Warden, I might actually say Canis, because you get old school Canis out of that detachment, and it's just a lot of fun. Who could say no to that? Questor's Companions and Atropos. There has to be at least one in that list. And then Spearhead, I don't disagree with the Defender, but I would actually say, I'll also say, I think the Preceptor. It's
wow.
Cheap, and I love reroll. Yeah. It is the only access we have to reroll wounds.
Yeah,
and that's really good when you have low quantity, high quality shooting.
Yeah, I love the idea of the Preceptor and how cheap the Preceptor is. I have tried the Preceptor a couple of times in games and just been a little like, but that's probably me not getting it right or not figuring it out. Eduardo, I feel like that's a great question. Thank you. Zatanos from the Red Box Cult. Are the units you build around and start each list with? I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of that off. How many knights do you want for dedicated roles shooting hybrid melee? I feel like we've covered that off from Griffin. Andy and Brum, here we go. Should I run an Eversaw alongside my Calidus? People, if you're not watching the YouTube and you're just listening to this, Rees does a lot of head shaking through these episodes. And he's shaking his head right now. So no Calidus for you. Man, I love the Calidus, but just 120 is too many points, right? So we know how Rees feels.
He was asking about the
Sorry,
Eversaw,
that's what I meant. Eversaw, sorry. Should I run an Eversaw alongside my Calidus? Yes. Rees, a no from you. Brian?
Never again. I ran it in one. I charged it ahead in to the Awakened Dynasty Wraith Bricks, and he didn't roll any sixes for sustained hits, and he just didn't kill a Technomancer that he precisioned out. And it was like, oh wow, man, this is the one thing I brought you for. Okay. And then I was like, he goes back on the shelf. He looks great. Love him running on that wall like he's in Titanfall, but no.
Yeah. That's funny. That's how I feel about the Castellan. You had one job, Castellan, and you didn't do it. Mind you, I was shooting my Castellan at a Demon Prince with a 4-up invul. So, and the guy just kept rolling 4s. So now I know how people feel about my Lancer. All right. Now, Ratnu, we covered this off with the other two guys earlier on, but it is a good question for you as well. When considering a list, how does your personal play style, how much does that influence the list versus, say, the meta and other considerations? What do you think about that as a way of shaping your list?
I think anybody can run a quote unquote like meta list and get like a 3-2 or even a kind of 4-1. I think it's really important to play in a way that you feel comfortable with. So I think one of the sort of key sort of sticking points when it came to submitting my list for Worlds was, what third big knight do I take? Is it going to be the third double Gatling gun despoiler, or is it going to be something else? And I think where I sort of differed from the kind of consensus was that I think fundamentally it's about filling roles and doing things that the rest of the army doesn't. And leaning into the sort of play style and sort of the way that I play is inherently a little bit defensive, but at the same time, I think the sort of word of the day is probably flexibility. So trying to have data sheets that are flexible, sort of trying to have data sheets that fulfill a variety of roles and solve problems that other data sheets don't. So yeah, I think personal playstyle, anyone can take a good meta list and potentially do well with it, but playing it in a way that you enjoy the most is going to give you the sort of best feeling and the sort of best results.
Great. Yeah, I love that. Great way of putting it. Chadley says, if you don't have access to an Atropos, and there's an explanation as to why living in the desert reason doesn't work in the desert. But if you don't have access to an Atropos or easy access, is there an easy replacement for an Atropos anywhere? Is there a Temu Atropos? Do you have Temu? Do you guys have Temu in the UK and the States?
I see the ads for it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wish is the other. Yeah. So is there a Wish Atropos?
I mean,
Okay.
You're never going to have something quite as powerful against big units as the Atropos, right? It's just that's what the data sheet was built for. It's not going to be as efficient, but yeah, that's your best option. It's
like if you just can't get an Atropos, an errand, if you're shooting at the closest thing, hits on 2s, it can really smash vehicles. It can punch things as well. It's not as good, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Canis is actually kind of is kind of now the Wish.com Atropos.
This is listening. I apologize. What a fall from grace. Wow.
I know. Wow. Yeah, my man over on the shelf just glaring at me. But like this isn't like
from the auto include to the Wish Atropos. That's wow. That's rough.
It's an interesting gap for us in IK because we don't, unless it has a melee invuln on its data sheet, we have no way to give it to them. And it's one place, Ratnu, I won't lie, I'm jealous of kind of the flexibility you get out of Infernal because I feel like you do get, like you can kind of turn anything into an Atropos then if it has 2 guns.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. And this is a key thing when we're talking about list building is some of the, like Ratnu, when you're building a list, you have access to some things that we don't have. And so and then we have access to some things you don't, I guess, which is, you got to look at everything, which brings us to an interesting question from Scott. How do you analyze a unit to know if it's good or efficient? What is there a process? Is there a spreadsheet? Is there a way of doing it? I see Ratnu nodding, so we'll ask you to answer that one. What is the way of analyzing a unit to see if it's good? Other than just, well, that seems like it would be.
I mean, the first thing I do is I'll always ask Rees. Rees is my kind of go-to guy for kind of looking at units. I'm sure he can explain the process. But I think when it comes to the sort of thing, it's we can really delve into number crunching and like unit crunching and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, whenever it comes to any data sheet, you need to ask yourself: does it shoot? Does it punch? Does it do something else? Does it do both? And how does that fit in with the rest of your army? Fundamentally, it's just about like we sort of keep on coming back to is, does it fulfill like a specific role that you want it to do? And do you think it's going to be efficient within that role? And then everything else kind of comes secondary to that.
Okay. And so is there Rees, Brian, is there a way of going, well, for this many points, it should have this many wounds versus this much output, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how you do that, but is there a way to do that?
I'm sure someone has a way. I have not fallen into like that level of mathing 40K because it's a dice game, so math sometimes just goes out the window.
Yeah.
The example I would kind of give is like the Valiant, right? I think about it. It's priced like an expensive or Questoris. But to Ratnu's point, when I go, what does it do in my list well or that somebody else can't do well? Well, it moves slower. It does have a T12. That's kind of nice. But it has no combat, and its guns are really short range. So it wants to get close, but if it doesn't kill something, it doesn't have any answers. And I'm like, I'm just feeling a lot of weaknesses. There are a lot of other things I could put into that same spot and go, cool, its guns are slightly longer range and it has higher movement, or it's better in combat, so I don't mind it being there. That's one of the like for me, that's often how I think of a data sheet fitting into a list is like, is it doing something better than anyone else could do?
Right. Yeah, great. Have we in Imperial Knights, Daryl is asking in a roundabout way, Daryl wants an example of a competitive list for each detachment, but Daryl, I'm really sorry. That is something we don't have time for, but I do like the second part of this question. Which detachment has your attention the most? I'm loving Valor Strike at the moment. I haven't tried Gate Warden Lance, whichever one that is. But I have tried the others a few times, and I'm really liking Valor Strike. And the reason, if I can give it really quickly, again, as a very mid-level player, is that the stratagems work on all of the knights. One of the things I found with the Questoris companions was there are some great strats, but you can't use them on any of the baby knights. They're only for the big knights. And in Spearhead, if the baby knights get killed and you've got a couple of big knights left, the stratagems are useless. So I am loving in Valor Strike being able to use everything on everything and being able to buff everything up and some of the enhancements and the strats are really strong, and I'm having a lot more fun with how much more play it has. So that's from me. But Rees, your tag for people watching on YouTube is Spearhead Enthusiast. Is it Spearhead, or are you looking at other things? Are you Spearhead? You're married to Spearhead, but you're looking at the other table thinking, well, she's cute.
That's only when Ratnu's on that table. But mainly I'm testing Gate Warden.
Yeah.
I've been testing a lot of Gate
Warden.
Warden. I'm really liking Gate Warden as a detachment. It's really spicy.
Okay, great.
A lot of tools in that box.
Yeah. Brian, you came out of the gate, funnily enough, with Gate Warden, and then you took Valor Strike to a big event. Have you kind of worked out what your favorite is at the moment, or are you still kind of playing the field, if I can keep that horrible metaphor going?
No, maybe playing the field a little bit. I'm dancing with the one who brung me. I'm taking Valor Strike to Worlds. Literally a carbon copy of my LVO list. But there's a Spearhead list that has been tempting me. And then at some point, I need to be a responsible knight player like Rees is and actually put in the time and energy with Gate Wardens so that I have the knowledge to leverage that list properly, that detachment properly.
Yeah. Let's Doug by Daylight. We've answered that, I think. Thank you for your question.
Wait, what about Ratnu? You got to let him talk about his favorite detachment.
Well, as Ratnu said earlier on, I feel like Chaos Knights are largely solved, or are there people like Lords of Dread is still getting play, right? Ratnu, I mean, maybe not by you, but there are people who are still taking it and enjoying it.
Yeah. So interestingly, on both the 40k by Night Discord and some of the Chaos Knight ones, Zatanos, our red box cult leader, will post the Axon ones, and maybe like sort of 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a slight resurgence of Hound Pack Lance. So we've sort of done our time in the sort of War Dog mines, and yet people yearn to go back to them to a certain extent. I really, really, really like the Grotmus one, Iconoclast Fiefdom. I think it's the best single detachment the Chaos Knights have, but because we're so focused on Infernal that we are just missing out on all the tools and tricks and the sheer flexibility that Iconoclast Fiefdom offers.
So what will it take? Just someone to do really, really well with Iconoclast Fiefdom, and then players from around the world will go, oh, wait, I didn't realize that was a thing. Because there does tend with the internet to be this whole thing of we see, we do. We kind of, a lot of players will copy lists. One of the greatest feelings in the world for someone like me is when I have an idea and I take it to a thing, and then one of you top dogs has a similar idea, but I'm like, wait, so they agree with me. They see a thing that I thought would be good, and it turns out they agree. And I love that when you guys do that. So, Rees, thanks for saying that the Lancer could work in Valor Strike earlier on. That made me happy. How do you balance the roles of knights picked? I think we've done that. Heidi84, Jay, how important are allies? We've covered that off. Man, we're racing through these now because we've actually already answered a lot of these questions. How do you use those last few points? Oh boy, this is tough.
Oh,
yeah.
I get sad that War Gear's free.
Yeah. As I've already mentioned on this podcast, the thing that makes me saddest is that all of the baby knights are now, the 2 baby knights we have in Imperial Knights are now the same points value. So you can't go, okay, well, I need an extra 10. I'll switch one out for the other, and then I still get my enhancements. But if you've put a list together that is 30 or 40 points short, or 5 or 10 points short, and you can't fit in an enhancement, then I don't know. Rees, you have a thought?
I should say, I hardly played before fixed cost war gear, so I don't know what that's like. This is all. It just sounds like a headache to sort. I will just rejig my allies.
It actually meant you had like 5 and 10. You could shave points and create gaps where you needed to. It just the flexibility isn't there anymore, which is a bummer.
It is one of the worst things when you're like, man, if I really want that enhancement, but it puts me 5 points over, so I can't take that, or I'll have to take a preceptor.
I'll just rejig the whole list.
Yeah.
It has to end even.
Yeah. I just ran fixed secondary, says Andy and Brum, for the first time. Cleans an established locus in Valor Strike. Interesting. Would you recommend fixed, or do you always go tactical? And Ratnu, I don't know if this is different for Chaos Knights, but if you're playing 2 or 3 bigs, let's go around the room. I for personally, unless I'm playing an army that obviously gives up fixed points, I think I just always go tactical, but that's probably because my brain is not big enough. Ratnu, fixed, tactical, does it depend?
So typically, if you're against another kind of stat checky durability skew army, let's say you're against another knight player who has taken, say, 4 or 5 big knights, often there's that kind of temptation to go fixed. But I think the CP economy is so important, because the CP economy lets you reliably turn your tools on and reliably lets you sort of play the game in the way that you're used to playing it. So having that kind of familiarity aspect is really helpful. Having said that, I actually took Iconoclast Fiefdom to an RTT before the Codex. I took fixed secondaries every game, and I absolutely loved it. It was really good fun. Really good fun.
But that comes back to list building, right? Like when you build your list, very often we're building a list that we think, okay, I have the units now that can go and get me the points for whatever cards come up. So you're already in your mind taking tactical, unless you build a list that is specifically you are designing with a couple of fixed secondaries in mind. Is that a fair comment, Brian?
I think in some of the first mission packs this edition it was. By and large, GW has done a good job of balancing the secondaries to remove the option of, I'm going to target these 2 fixed secondaries that don't require me to interact with my opponent. My army can just achieve them.
Right.
Done. And I think that that's a huge credit. I don't take fixed. I love having CP. You'll rarely see me ever say I had too much CP that game. And I think if my opponent takes fixed, or if I take fixed, I am giving my opponent control of my secondary. And I don't want that. I need to have the agency. Like if Rees and I play the mirror and Rees says I'm taking fixed and I'm taking tactical, cool. I'm going to stand behind terrain and touch objectives and accomplish secondaries, because then I might get like a 20 on secondary, but Rees is going to get a 0 unless he overextends and comes at me. And I don't want to give my opponent that kind of power over me. So that's me. And that's because I've lost games before where I was like, oh, this, I should totally take fixed. And then I realized that I've lost all agency.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, we're running over time a little bit, and we have answered most of the questions, but there is one quite important question that I've just spotted that maybe we can get to quickly before we say goodbye, and that is list building in singles versus teams. So I feel like we're, like most of the episode, we've approached this from a singles point of view. Does the philosophy in list building, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, change when you're talking teams? If we can quickly go around the room, starting with Rees, you're a part of a couple of different teams. So how does the list building philosophy change for you?
It all depends on what the team comp is, right? If I need to be in a role where I push, then it's going to be a more aggressive list. It's going to be more skewed to play well in matchups that I know I can get, or on boards I can get, because we can skew the pairings. If I'm told by my captain, Rees, get as many points as you can, you're eating the worst things this weekend, I'm building defensive. I'm building the ability to score as much as I can. And I'm sure, as Brian knows, we get that role a lot. We do. So it really, list building changes a ton, right? It's the same core concepts going into it, but you know what you want from that list rather than I want to be able to handle everything. You have goals of I want to be able to do this or this, and it's then constructed around that.
It might depend also whether it's a 5-person team or an 8-person team, for example, as well, because then you can, if in an 8-person team, you probably can skew harder in one direction, I think is fair to say. Brian, what about you? Philosophy change for teams?
Spot on with Rees. It definitely does. For me in teams, I like the blunter role. I like being told, Brian, if you could get 4 points, it's great. Like, go. And the other part that changes for me in the list building is that in teams, consistency is key. In that you want your list 9 times out of 10 to like land in this safe little margin. And like Questor's Companions, like, cool, it might give you 3 games with a 20-0 on your side, and then the other 2 are an 0-20 because like you just didn't make, and that's terrible for your team to try to plan around. And so like I turn into a spearhead enthusiast along with Rees if I get told I get to take knights in teams, because like that is a list that you have enough bodies, enough wounds spread out over things that there's consistency and it smooths the variance, and you can trade effectively to keep a game close. That works and is valuable in teams, whereas in singles you would go, well, that same strategy just means that I lose like closely, and 1 point means all the difference in a singles match, right? And in teams, I do kind of love it. I think it opens up more list building in a team's environment, because you can also be told, like, actually, we just need you to attack for these specific matchups. I learned that at Challengers Cup. I learned the term pairing princess. I didn't know. I learned it because I've never gotten to be that, but I discovered that's what my teammates were because I was always taking out the trash. And so if you get to be a pairings princess, it's even better.
Wow. Obviously, I've never heard that phrase, perhaps because it's just never applied to me. Ratnu, what about you? Just quickly before we go, the difference in teams philosophy for a Chaos Knights player versus singles philosophy.
Sure. So I think Chaos Knights sort of are now beginning to fulfill slightly more of a kind of pairings princess role, because there's so much hostile stuff in the meta that you can just take your triple Gatling under spoilers, but sometimes they will just bounce against certain defensive profiles. So in terms of list building philosophy, number 1 is, do you have access to demons? Number 2 is sort of thinking about, we spent this past hour talking about what do your units do for you. It's what do you do for your team? What's your role within that team? It's thinking, do I want to be a blunter, as kind of Brian was saying? Do I want to be that kind of aggressive pusher, as Rees was saying? And just genuinely, just sort of thinking a little bit more about what tools do I have at my disposal that will best let me fulfill that role? Because in a team's list, it's not necessarily about shoring your weaknesses. It's about amplifying your strengths. It's about how can I turn that 12 to a 15? How can I turn that 15 to an 18, as opposed to turning that 5 to a 0, or turn that 0 to a 5, because you will not be paired if your captain's good into sort of 30 Dark Lances or like 30 Haywire or whatnot. Right.
If your captain's good, my captain should take note, because I'm not familiar with pairings princess, but I have heard under the bus several times. That's a phrase I'm very familiar with. Wow, Ratnu channeling John F. Kennedy there. Ask not what your units can do for you, but what you can do for your team. That is so good. Gentlemen, we are done. Thank you so much for your time, and particularly the extra time. Brian came in at short notice. Ratnu hasn't been feeling well. Rees has just been super flexible with all the changes. I really appreciate all 3 of you. Thank you for doing this. And folks, thank you for listening. Now, if this works, I'm just going to do this to say goodbye on behalf of everybody. I can push this button for people watching on YouTube, and then we'll say goodbye. Brian, Rees, Ratnu, thank you. Check out Brian on Art of War, Rees and Ratnu, and all the best at Worlds, by the way. Before we go, Brian and Ratnu, you're both going to Worlds. When is it?
Next week.
Is it next? Wow. Okay. Crikey. Well, good luck. I think Rees is hoping Brian does well, but not too well at Worlds, because Brian is chasing the number 1 spot in the ITC. Is that right? No? Are you both?
For
okay.
Knights. For Knights.
That's what I meant. For Knights. Yes. Very good. All right. Well, all the best to everybody. We are going to say goodbye now. I'm going to remind people that the dice are available. They are back in stock at the Baron of Dice, and the link is on the website, which is 40kbynight.com. On behalf of Ratnu and Brian and Rees and everybody else who was a part of our team, Stig, who just could not be here today, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time. This has been 40K by Night.